Welcome to my review of Pang Adventures, and I got this on PS4 and I was playing it on PS5. And I believe it's on a few different platforms. I believe it took me maybe around 4.5 hours to beat, so it is pretty challenging, but the good thing is, tour mode is the main mode as you see here. There's a few modes that are, the other two modes are locked when you first start, but you do unlock them later. You may have to complete tour mode to unlock them. I think there's like a survival mode and a score attack mode, both of which I didn't really fuck with, so I don't know exactly what those are. But in the tour mode, it's a simple premise. Basically, you have to clear out all the balls on the screen, or bubbles. So basically, you got to pop all the bubbles, and then you beat the stage. And whenever you beat a stage, it's permanently saved. You never have to redo a stage that you beat. The game saves, and it has infinite continues. So that's the premise of the game. I believe there is maybe 5 to 6 worlds with 15 stages each. So there's a decent amount of stages. And like I said, it took me about 4.5 hours because there's some stages that can be quite challenging. It starts off very easy. And in this review, I tried to capture a nice little variety of stages to showcase, to show some of the different gameplay elements that are introduced. Now, as far as all the platforms that this is available on, I didn't double check that. I know it's on PS4, and I think it's on PC as well. I can tell you that the PS4 version was the cheapest one out of all of them. I think I got this for $3. I think there was a big sale. So, I will say that this turned out being one of the better downloadable games that I've ever played. I thought it was fucking great. I mean, I would have easily paid $20 for the game. But remember that you do have to like these old arcade-style trial-and-error type of games to enjoy this kind of game. So if you're not into those, then you probably won't like it. But if you are, then it can be very addictive. So you can see some new mechanics. Some of the stages introduce different things. Like in this one, the walls are closing in the whole time, and you got some enemies to deal with. A lot of times the hardest part about the stages almost always is the timer. Is trying to kill all the bubbles in the amount of time. Some of the timers are really tight, which makes it tough. Another thing that can be challenging, that takes a skill that you have to develop, is dodging, is kind of changing sides really quick to dodge all the bubbles. Because there's some dense areas where you really have to be able to switch sides fast or you'll get killed. There is boss fights in this version. This is based on the Buster Brothers games, which are very old games from the 80s on various platforms. But this adds bosses, much more unique levels, and of course, it's not limited continues or limited lives. You have as many tries as you need to beat it, so you can just keep trying. The boss fights are pretty cool. Most of them are these variations on these tentacle guys, where you have to pop the tentacle. There's a bubble on each tentacle you have to pop, and then you have to hit the eyeball 3 times to kill the boss. That's how most of them are. But the final boss is a completely unique boss fight and the hardest one, and it's a cool fight. And I believe I show that in its entirety in the review. I also did a tutorial on this game with commentary, which I will link in the description, so check that out. It should also help with some of the strategies, as far as if you get stuck on some of the stages, there are some good strategies to make things easier on a lot of them. So here we have the lightning bubbles, which when you pop them, they shoot down a lightning bolt that will electrocute you if you don't move left or right to get out of the way. But you're not seeing that now because the way it works is if you have a special weapon, like a power, because you can pick up special weapons on the field. If you have a special weapon, then usually that will disable the lightning so it doesn't shoot the lightning out. So that's usually the best way to deal with the lightning bubble. So that gives it a little gameplay depth. If you want to counter these things, it's good to get a power weapon. You don't need it most of the time, but it does help a lot if you have some kind of power weapon so you don't get shot by the lightning. Because then if the lightning is shooting down, you have to dodge it every time you pop one of the bubbles. So it's going to make it a lot slower to take them all out, a lot more dangerous. So there are some strategies there. Sometimes you have these little barriers and stuff that you can walk through that will keep the bubbles in those little chambers, as you can see. There's things that you have to protect, but I don't think you really need to protect those things. I think I've let them all die. I think as long as you clear out all the bubbles, you usually beat the stage. Aside from the boss stages where you do have to defeat the boss. Now, whenever you get to a boss stage, it also does give you a checkpoint there, and you can try the boss an unlimited amount of times. You don't get sent back anywhere. You get to start right at the beginning of the boss fight. You also have these hourglass timers. Whenever you get these, you can freeze everything for a certain amount of seconds, and you're completely invincible. You can even stand on the bubbles and not die. Normally, if the bubbles touch you, it's one-hit death. There are shields that can give you an extra hit, and sometimes you can pick up a few shields in a single stage, which can give you some damage you can take. There's weapon drops, shield drops. There's new mechanics being introduced frequently, like these bomb bubbles, that you can make them count down faster by shooting them more, or they will blow up on their own when the timer runs out. Those are pretty cool. There's also, the way it basically works is you have your default weapon, which is a spear, as you see here, just a regular spear. The way the spear works is you can only shoot out one at a time. Once that spear connects, it's kind of like Space Invaders. Once your spear projectile connects, you can immediately fire out the next one. But if it doesn't connect to anything, you're stuck with no weapon. So you do have to plan that out and set that up right. You also have to be good at switching sides because, see, the spear lingers for about a split second. It lingers in the air for about a split second. So while it's lingering, that's when you switch sides, and you can use that to give yourself a protective shield for a moment from the bubbles. And if you're really good at it, you can switch sides left to right really fast. In the midst of a massive amount of bubbles, you can actually dodge them all and destroy them all by being really good at switching sides. So that is a very important skill for the game. And it's cool. It's very good mechanic in the game. Works very well. Control is super tight. I was playing with a joystick, a modded arcade joystick, and it felt fucking great on that. Because it feels, it's an arcade style game, so it feels great to play with a joystick. But, I'm sure it plays fine on any standard controller that's a good controller. There's some platforming, as you can see, involving springs, but the game does not have a jump button. So all the platforming is done via springs and shit like that. And you just walk on the springs, and that will, lift you up in the air. So sometimes, there's a lot of puzzle elements to a lot of the stages where you do have to figure out what order to do things in. A lot of trial and error, to get the stages cleared in time. Or just to survive. Some of them are not even hard because of the timer. Some of them are just hard not to die. So it's it has a lot of challenge. Each stage is different enough to where it's interesting and keeps it addictive. There's a really great pace to the game. So if you are a fan of the old Buster Brothers games, then this is, there's not even anything to think about with the purchase. Just get the game. But if you're not a fan of those games or not familiar with them and you just like old arcade style games, you probably will love this game because it's really fucking good. It's really, it's just really well paced. It's not the same shit every stage. A lot of old arcade games even were like almost the same shit a lot of times, or they send you all the way back too. So it's less addictive because you got to start the whole game over. Even the old Donkey Kong games, they're short, but if you die in the last stage, you got to start on the first stage again. If you lose all your lives. This keeps it more addictive because in this, you get to start on whatever stage you last made it to. It's just that the game offers enough depth and challenge to where they can do that. You know what I mean? Like if the game was too easy, it would be shitty to start you on the stage you got to because you would just blow through the game and you wouldn't have any satisfaction. But in this game, it's really well paced, really well done. It's not like each stage gets progressively more difficult. It's done in such a way where some stages are going to be a lot harder. Sometimes you get a bunch of easy stages. It gives you a nice mix so that you're not just playing harder and harder and you get burnt out. You get a nice mix. So it's really well paced. Some might call it an unbalanced difficulty because like when you get to the ice world, which is a little later in the game, that whole world is way easier than some of the other worlds. But I think it's cool because it gives you a nice little break. And then you get back into the harder shit again. I think it's really a nice mix-up. And I kind of like that style. I don't like everything to be super predictable where, okay, it's going to curve in a predictable curve where, it's going to get more difficult on every single stage. I don't necessarily like that better. So I think that's actually a strength of the game. Now, in this final boss fight that you're seeing here, it's pretty long. It's obviously one-hit deaths as it's always been, but you can get some shields and some power-up weapons. But the main thing you're trying to do here is you have to activate the purple missile or destroy the purple UFO. And when you do that, you're going to disable the shield around the boss for a certain amount of time. Now, the way you can tell how long that shield is going to be disabled is by watching the meter on that little UFO that's providing the shield. There's a meter on his body. So what you want to try to do is balance that meter. with when you use the purple, when you destroy the purple UFOs and purple missiles, you want to kind of balance the meter by watching it. And you get a feel for it after a while, but it's a very cool fight. Then once the shield is down, you fuck with the green stuff to damage the ship. So by green shit, I mean you destroy the green UFOs and you activate the green missiles, and that's going to hit the ship and damage it. But if the shield is up, obviously, then you got to fuck with the purple shit again. You know, purple missiles, purple UFOs. As long as you attack one purple UFO or fire one purple missile, it's enough to disable the shield. It only takes one hit to disable it, but you got to make sure that you disable it when it's about to come up, or your green missiles and shit have a little bit of a delay before they land. So if the shield goes back up, then it'll deflect your hit. So to get the most damage, you want to keep that shield down and really pace it out properly. And I go through all that detail in the tutorial. I explain it all. But this can be challenging because some of the phases are kind of hard to survive. You know, it is easy to get hit. So it can be a little tricky. This was the stage that probably took me the longest to beat. But I think all in all, the game maybe took me around 4.5 hours. And some players, it may take over 10 hours or more. It just depends on how skilled you are with these type of games. But the game will require a good amount of skill to actually complete. It's not an easy game, but it's nothing brutal. It's definitely learnable. And like I said, there's other modes that I didn't even try, and there is a co-op mode. So I didn't try that either, but you can actually play this in 2 players, which, if you are having trouble, it would probably be a great game to play with somebody, because it looks like, from what I've seen in videos, it looks like 2 players is pretty much the same as 1 player, but with an extra player, which would probably make shit way easier. It doesn't seem like there's more enemies or anything added, so I don't think they take that into the mind. So, I mean, it's good for players that are having trouble with the game. You can play 2 players locally. I don't think there's an online, but I didn't look for it. But yeah, overall, I would give this game an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's one of the best DLC games that I played. I thought it was great. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.